I think of all this talk about equality. In a sense, equality is enormously important, and in another sense, it's enormously irrelevant. It's important that we have equality before the law. It's important that we regard each other with a certain kind of equality. But to talk in terms of equality of capabilities is madness. I mean, if you're the world's leading authority on some particular subject, that doesn't mean that you have even minimal competence in 100 other things. And it's one of the most dangerous things in the academic world and among intellectuals in general is they often seem to assume that they know better than other people about all sorts of things, including things that these other people know from their own personal experience.
See, and the detractors of Sowell would say that that's essentially what he's doing as well, right? That he's, excuse me, that he's stepping outside of his lane when talking about these issues. The difference is that Sowell is coming at almost everything from an economic standpoint, which that's what he is, right? He's an economist. So he's looking at data, he's looking at statistics, he's looking at, world economies, how they work. And then also, even when it comes to cultural issues, when it comes to, when his book, I think it's white rednecks or white liberals and black rednecks, right? He's looking at the cultural implications of how I forget which part of England they came from, but the poor from England, when they migrated, they went to the southern part of the U.S., and then that's a lot of the black culture that exists today is directly derived from there. And he can see, because he breaks the stuff down with data, that the speech patterns, some of the words, is directly correlated from an ancestry that derives from a poor place in England. So, even though people might say that that's something similar that he's doing, he's not. Right? He's just looking at data and telling you what he sees in the data.
That's what makes intellectuals so dangerous.
All right. Back to your website, Tom. Under the heading Biographies, you provide a link to A Personal Odyssey, which is your own autobiography or memoir. Here you are in A Personal Odyssey describing your response to the civil rights movement of the 1960s. I'm quoting you. The idea seemed to be that white people's sins were all that stood between us and economic and social parity through American society. The enormous amount of internal change needed within the black community in education, skills, and attitudes seemed wholly unnoticed. Civil rights were important in and of themselves as a matter of justice. But to expect civil rights to solve our economic and social problems was barking up the wrong tree, close quote. Tom, this notion that civil rights, as important as they are in and of themselves as a matter of justice, but that the black community needed, and I'm quoting you again, internal change. Could you explain that?
Well, in one sense, that's, well, first of all, I would repeat that now, that all groups have their own cultures, and in many groups, including blacks, there are internal differences in cultures within the same race or ethnicity. And so one of the great handicaps historically that the black community has had is that during the era of slavery, blacks were concentrated 90% or more in the South. And the South, in turn, had its own culture, which was different from people who came from other parts of Britain. And I've gone into this at length in a book called Black Rednecks and White Liberals. And the people who came from the South, they had this culture when they were back in Britain, where they were called crackers and rednecks and things like that. And it's easy to understand if you understand the history of their life in Britain. But once they transferred to the United States, that same culture was a huge handicap. And that's the culture that blacks grew up in. And so, and again, with blacks as with the whites, more and more generations of blacks began to put aside that culture to operate in ways that would be more productive for them in the new society. And now this counterproductive culture persists in many low-income ghettos. And unfortunately, there are intellectuals and others who celebrate this culture and try to keep it going, when in fact it's a great handicap.
So, Tom, one of the themes that runs throughout your
and it's a good book. I didn't. Sorry that I just mentioned it. I didn't realize that was going to be coming up in this particular clip. But yeah, culture. I mean, the people that want to say that race has everything to do with it. Look at the whites in Appalachia, right? Look at poor whites that were derived from the similar culture that he's talking about. And obviously these are, and then look at some of the different northern blacks at the time that became extremely affluent, right? That were very distant from that culture. So obviously culture has a large factor, because the culture is what's going to determine where you're putting the emphasis in whatever it is that you're doing, where you're putting the emphasis in, whether it be education, whether it be, entrepreneurship, or what have you. I'm going to break this down. I'll put the full link in the description of this interview. Guys, think about it. He's 94 years old doing this. All right. So we're not going to have him around for much longer. So it's really great that we're able to sit down with him again and just take him all in and understand that 94 years and a lot of his, thinking and reasoning and things that he's written decades ago, he still holds true today. And, he's not just making this stuff up. These are things that he's, considered, thought about, and he has the data to back a lot of this stuff up. Thanks a lot so much for coming out. If you could please subscribe, please do that. It helps me out a lot. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you again in the next video.